Copywriting. It's something we all had to do at some point for various reasons. At its core, copywriting is simply writing persuasively, but it's more than that. What about writing that evokes action? Well, I can't think of a better, more instantaneous example of that than a comedian. And so now you might be thinking, I wonder if a stand-up comedian would actually make for a good marketer. Well, our guest today, Kevin Rogers, best-selling author of The 60-Second Sales Hook and founder of Copy Chief, a thriving community of the world's top online marketers, has that answer. And a whole lot more. And there's no 2-drink minimum on this episode of the Peak Performers Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Kevin, thank you very much for joining us today. I know the audience is going to get so much out of today's episode. So share with us, how did you go from stand-up comedian to copywriter?
Oh, man, it's a long and winding road. I'll give you the highlights. Spent 7-8 years on the road as a comic. And yeah, great way to spend your 20s, Thor, right? Like,
yeah.
When you have no idea that there's things to be taken seriously. You know, I used to just roll up on fumes to my next gig. That's all that mattered. You know, I was going to get paid that night. I was going to get to do a show. I was going to get some free drinks. Life was grand. And, you know, start to grow up a little bit and burned out on road life. So decided, well, let me figure out this whole why people give each other money thing. And, you know, it was interesting, man, because I had no skills. Like, you know, I dropped out of high school to become a stand-up comic, and I was on the road at 19, right? So when I get to 28, 29, and I'm thinking I might want to try some other line of business, my resume says stand-up comedian for the last 10 years. And try getting a job even like as a valet car parker, you know, and they're going, yeah, you're an entertainer. You don't really want to work here. And so it was challenging to go sort of, you know, go legit. And I got very fortunate in a friend of mine brought me into his company because he trusted me. He hired me on my character, right? He knew I didn't know anything about his business, but it happened to be a marketing business. Kind of taught me the ropes. I got excited about marketing, and I always loved to write. So he hired a consultant who I became friendly with, who turns out to be a real direct response marketing junkie, and named Chris Tomasulo. And Chris introduced me to copywriting. He knew I loved to write. He said, yeah, you should check this out. I think you'd be good at it. And he showed me a sales letter. And I thought, this is the stupidest, ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like nobody, who would read this, let alone respond to it, right? And then he started breaking down the science behind it and explaining to me the psychology and why it works and how, you know, it's not for everybody on purpose. And I was like, this is interesting. Then he turned me on to Halbert and John Carlton and Clayton Makepeace and all these greats. And I get tingly just thinking back to it. I mean, it was like finding my second calling. And I realized, wow, this is it, man. And then it was just about, okay, now how do I actually get paid for this? But the path was set from there.
Yeah, well, interesting, because, you know, you're writing your own jokes, you know, you're getting up on stage, and you probably did have a lot of skills that a lot of entrepreneurs and executives wish they had. That's getting in front of an audience and being able to work on your feet. I mean, you've got hecklers, you've got, you know, jokes that don't work well, and you just have to respond quickly and just kind of keep going.
Yeah, it's a great point. I didn't realize until after I'd been in copywriting and in my own business for a while, how many parallels there were and how many valuable skills I had. In fact, I didn't get on a stage to present as, you know, to a business crowd for a good 5 or 6 years after I started copyright. It didn't even occur to me to like, oh, wow, I should go, you know, combine those two experiences. I did start writing about it. It was John Carlton who said, man, how come you're not talking about your experience as a copywriter? Because that's fascinating to people, and a lot of people would love to do that, and it would really make you stand out. And I was like, yeah, of course, it makes sense. I just learned to bury it, right? Because it was costing me work. And So you're right. You're exactly right. Now I'm sort of, fully aware of all that potential. And it's interesting, full circle. So yes, I do a lot of speaking now, and it's always fabulous because it's like cheating for a comic. People there are not expecting humor. So if you get 2 or 3, 4 pretty big laughs, they think it's like you might as well be Houdini. They just can't believe it. And it's if that were a stand-up set, you'd feel like you died. But in a conference setting, it's magic. And the other cool thing is I actually just went back to stand-up. I had been away for 12 years, and my friend Billy Gardell, who was on a show called Mike and Molly for 6 seasons, challenged me to come open a theater show for him. And yeah, it was a big challenge. I spent 60 days developing 25 minutes of new material, and we did the show last month, and it was a gas. So kind of full circle on everything, man. I've got both skills cooking now.
It's funny. I've got a buddy here in Atlanta that owns a comedy club. And what he does also is his main business is actually teaching executives of how to incorporate humor into their presentations. Yeah,
that's brilliant. That is something I would love to get into because it is kind of a rare skill. I would say it's rare because so few people have dedicated their time to it, like your friend has, right?
Yeah.
To really go out there and it sucks to die, man. Like it hurts, and it's inevitable. It's going to happen as a stand-up. And anybody who's put themselves through that to get good at it, they really have something special to share and to teach.
Let's touch on that for a second, because you can be in the middle of a business meeting and you're not using humor, but it's just not working. I mean, it's just crashing and burning, and you just want to crawl under the table, right? Yeah. What are some tips that you could use in the boardroom?
So if you are trying to be funny, or if you're just
you're just bombing.
Just trying to keep
what were the lessons on stage as a stand-up that maybe we can use in the boardroom?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say this, and it's a weird thing because I'll say there's a rule that goes against itself, but there are 2 things you should do. One is you can acknowledge it to break the ice. I think that probably works better in comedy than it would in a boardroom. Because, sometimes you just get off to a weird start in a comedy club and you're not quite connecting. And if you acknowledge it, it kind of lets everybody relax.
Yeah.
And then that can help you recover. In a boardroom, if you've got to get through your presentation, it's minute 5 into a 45-minute presentation, and hell or high water, you got to finish these slides. Admitting that you're, sweating is probably not going to help. I'd say the best thing to do is, pull yourself out of what you had planned and try to get in the moment and be spontaneous, right?
Yeah.
That's a bit of a vague piece of advice, but it always helps me. If I feel like I came up here with a plan, it's not working, I need to do something that's just going to make us all feel connected. So try to do something off the cuff and in the moment. Sometimes that can reset.
Yeah, just kind of break your pattern and just, kind of reset. Years ago, we were pitching a private equity firm, and I remember we were going through the presentation, and they're just kind of getting it. And then my boss at the time just took his presentation and threw it into the trash. And this is something that we spent a lot of time on. He goes, Look, I know when I walk out the door, that's exactly where it's going to go. So let's talk. Let's talk about what's really important to you right now. It changed it around. We got the deal.
I love it. That's great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Explain for us, for those out there that don't understand, what direct response is.
Yeah, direct response is very much what it sounds like. You're directly asking somebody to respond to your message. So, it's the difference between a commercial for, let's say, the ones where they say, order now, supplies are limited, or write to us in Pueblo, Colorado. You see, I don't know why everything's in Pueblo, but that's a direct response ad. They're saying, look, here's what we've got for you. Here's why it's great. You need to take action if you want this thing, because it's there's scarcity around this, urgency. You need to get this now at this special price. But wait, there's more. Now that's the cheesy version of what direct response is. But just to give somebody a picture of it, compared to a commercial for a car where there's two people having witty banter, and then they show a car for 5 seconds at the end, and you're going, why does that help me want a car, right? And so those are kind of the difference between image advertising and direct response. Direct response is it's measured by how much people respond and take action on what you're asking them to do.
And in direct response, are there different segments, whether it's video or email or?
Yes, absolutely.
So what are the different categories?
Yeah, I mean, it's become very nuanced over time, right? So, it started with print. It used to be in the days of John Caples, you could send, it was direct mail that you would, put a stamp on and send it to somebody. And it was also newspaper ads. And so you were asking people to mail in their response. So imagine the day where you had to send out and invest all this money and all this time and write this ad and hope that it worked, send out all this mail, and you have to wait up to 6 weeks or so to find out if it worked, right? You're either getting mail back saying, here's my check, send me the thing, or you're not, right?
Yeah, I had a business like that. Literally, we sent out thousands and thousands. Our customers were Vietnamese salon owners, and they just weren't kind of into the whole email thing. If you wanted them, you got to send out paper. And it was expensive. And sometimes it was funny. They'd keep it for 5 or 6 years. They'd pull it out of a drawer and go, can you still offer me this deal?
I've been saving up. Yeah,
exactly. And in that business, it was a good thing because pricing kept going down. So I'm like, yes, I will. I'll honor that one.
That's funny. You're making money by not
exactly.
And that's so that's the thing. I mean, we're really spoiled now. And of course, over time, as soon as phones became a thing, people started incorporated phone numbers, and then of course it became about, if we have somebody on the phone, we can interest them in other things and sort of upsell people. When radio came, that was the new format. Television, and of course, computer technology has changed everything. And so it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the opportunities and options there are today. But if you kind of just think back to the basics of what a direct response ad is, it's just an opportunity to be really compelling with why somebody would want what you have, and to also target. That's sort of the other key component. Is I gave the example of a commercial. That commercial would come on for a certain reason on that show. It means that to some degree that's their target audience. So for instance, Thor, probably that soap operas were created by Procter & Gamble to sell soap, right? You literally invented, let's put on these little TV plays, because back in those days, you could count on the audience being housewives who didn't work and they needed to do laundry. And it'd be a perfect opportunity to have the attention of your best prospect and sell them your soap. And so nowadays, of course, we can, get incredibly granular about who we're putting our ads in front of and test by the minute and on the fly. And it's really unbelievable. It's an incredible way to run a business, because it takes a little time to dial it in. But boy, once you get it there, it's almost like the bad analogy is like a broken ATM machine or something. It's, you put $1 in, you can get $1.50 back, up to $2, $3. That's why people get incredibly rich doing this, when they put the effort into figuring it out.
Yeah, and measuring it. Because I find so often people just kind of, try different things, and they don't take the time to measure and see what's working, what's not working. It's so important.
Right, measure, test. Yeah,
so important. Let's talk about where it might be going. Any ideas what you think? What the next 40 years, 20 years, 10 years? The Minority Report. I think that was the movie where you walked by a billboard and then it actually showed you an advertisement based on who you were.
Yeah, that's great. It's actually already happening. I've seen it tested with sidewalk billboards where you can opt in for a service and it'll read your app. You'll send out a Bluetooth signal and your face, your, say, Facebook profile picture will pop up on the screen and it will say, hey, Julie, totally cute shoes, 300 feet on the right, right? Crazy. That will be the future. You're exactly right. It's going to come down to how much people embrace that and how much they feel creeped out by it.
Yeah.
There's always a privacy issue. But look how much people opt in for things now. Every time I see somebody check in, you've got those friends on Facebook who just, they've got their check-in option, just on. And I have to see everywhere they go. And I'm like, I don't care that you're at, Larry's Whistle Stop right now, but there it is. And so people have really volunteered to have themselves tracked and followed. And I was just listening to, I forget the name of the book, but an author on Fresh Air with Terry Gross. And it was fascinating. He was talking about how they're measuring already, Thor, to the degree where how much you share about yourself and how much advertisers collect information about you could affect the price you pay based on assumptions they'll make about your income, your spending habits, and all those kinds of things. So there is a bit of an evil component to it.
It happens right now. When I don't live there now, but I had a beautiful large house on the golf course in the right section of town. And every time I call the contractor or somebody to do work, it's like, oh, you live on that street.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I can already see where the pricing's going.
Right. Exactly.
And I got friends that are landscapers, own large landscaping companies, and they're like, we change the pricing based on the street.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Accountability. Let's talk about it. Why are New Year's resolutions so seldomly seen through? Well, a lot of times life just sort of gets in the way. Priorities shift and we lose sight of what's most important. We need help. If you get sick, you go to a doctor. If you have car troubles, you go see a mechanic. If you got busted pipes, my friend, you need a plumber. That's why for things that are really important that you just can't do alone, you have to call an expert. And Thor Conklin is an accountability expert. It's impossible to have accountability for achieving your larger-than-life goals all alone. It just can't work. So what do? Well, just like with a cough, a carburetor, or a clog, you get a hold of an expert in the field. www.thorconklin.com/accountability.
So let's talk a little bit about copywriting. You've got an entrepreneur, you got a business owner that needs to get copy material out, and they've been doing it themselves. They probably haven't been doing a great job. And you can hire somebody, you can do it yourself. Let's start with do it yourself. If someone wants to learn how to become better at it, where do they start?
They should start by reading. There's a few classic books that will really give them the fundamentals. My favorite one, if you kind of know nothing and just really want a quick start education, there's a book called How to Write a Good Advertisement. It couldn't be a more plain title, by a guy named Victor O. Schwab. And you can get it on Amazon. And it's a fantastic book. It just does a great job of laying out the fundamentals of what copywriting is all about. And there's a little quiz at the end of every chapter that kind of helps you make sure you're getting it. And it's a book that, again, even though it's very basic, I go back to it all the time, and it's a great one to start with.
That's a good lead way to my next question here. Some of these older styles of advertising, the print, the newspaper, the phone, have kind of gone out of style, and we've moved towards this, everything's got to be in the computer, whether it's drip campaigns, funnels, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see people going back to some of the tried and true methods and getting success there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we, in my group, I have a community of copywriters and business owners, right? And we do a hot seat, and we had it today. And the ad we were reviewing was, get this, from a heart surgeon turned marketer. Is that great? A real heart surgeon. And now he's helping other medical professionals, market their businesses. And so he's sending out hard mail because just the online stuff wasn't working quite as well. He wants to stay local. He wants to consult with local companies. And so he was doing a really smart thing where he's photocopying their ad out of an industry magazine, and he's writing notes in the margins about how it could be improved, and he's sending it to them, right?
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, so that's pretty old school. That takes a lot of effort on his part. And of course, there's all kinds of tricks and tactics to make sure you get past gatekeepers so you can actually put the mail in the hand of the person holding the purse and all that. And so really interesting discussion because so many of these things just haven't changed when it comes to the basics. Of course, a lot of different philosophies about what he can do with their attention once he wins it. Eventually, it's kind of got to get online. But yeah, I mean, it's a great example of someone doing exactly what you said, going back to the basics to really stand out. I mean, mailers will tell you everybody's missing the opportunity that's there because very few people are taking advantage of it anymore. And people are just really trained to avoid advertising online as much as possible.
I had somebody on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was actually using flyers, handing out flyers on the street. Mm-hmm. And he goes, it worked like a charm. He goes, we used that back in the 80s, and it was great. And then everybody started doing, and then it wasn't effective. But it's almost, you kind of go counterculture to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter @Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
And that's it for the first part of our discussion with Copy Chief founder Kevin Rogers. Be on the lookout for part 2, where Kevin will talk about what to look for when hiring a copywriter and much, much more. The Peak Performers Podcast. See you at the top.